Every club.
Every day.
The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Fulham Podcast. Thank you very much for tuning in, wherever you may be, whatever time it may be, whether you're a first-time listener or a long-time listener, equally happy to have you here. My name is Gavin and today I'm bringing you your Match Review Monday, where I am looking back at the game on the weekend, where Fulham went down to defeat against Manchester United. Yes, a very familiar story, isn't it, when these two teams play? Doesn't seem to matter what form Manchester United are in, where they are in the league table. Generally, they come to Craven Cottage and they take 3 points. It's certainly their home away from home. For a lot of Manchester United fans, it's closer to their actual home than Old Trafford is, but a disappointing evening for Fulham, and one that's probably set them back as far as European football goes for next season. So let's get into it then. And for the first time ever, this pitted Marco Silva against Ruben Amorim, two men of Portugal, two men of Lisbon, two very good friends, enjoying very different seasons. Fulham coming into this one off the back of that win against Leicester, so looking to make it back-to-back wins for the first time since early November. Manchester United, in contrast, having suffered that defeat against Brighton, were able to bounce back in midweek in Europe against Rangers, hence the later kick-off time which they requested. As far as the teams went, well, for Fulham it was pretty easy for Marco Silva just to keep the same team that played against Leicester that kept that clean sheet. We saw some images from training with Reece Nelson, smiles on his face, so it looks like he's not far away from fitness and not far away from a return, which would be welcome news to all Fulham fans, but he wasn't quite fit enough to take a place in the matchday squad for this one. As for Manchester United, a few changes from midweek, as you would expect, 5 in total, as they look to win their first away game since the Manchester derby and only their third away win in the Premier League all season. On to the action then, and it was a pretty drab first half, if I'm being honest, very uneventful. Fulham were making the running, if either of the two teams were making any running. However, I thought they were a bit sluggish, considering they had the extra few days recovery on Manchester United, probably didn't make the most of that, and were quite sloppy in their play. I lost count of the amount of times that Joachim Andersen gave the ball away in the first 20 minutes. We know how good he is with those long diagonals, but there were a number of times where he just played the ball long, going forward, and aimlessly almost, and 99 times out of 100, well, not 99 times out of 100, but 99% of the time it just ended up being intercepted by a player in a red shirt. The majority of Fulham's good play was coming down the left side. We know they like to attack from that side. They have left side dominance. Iwobi did have a couple of chances. They were only real half chances driving through the middle, but Onana wasn't really made to work. Emile Smith-Rowe had another sort of half chance where he was crowded out by Maguire and De Ligt, or it might have been, I think it might have even been De Ligt and Martinez. Manchester United, on the other hand, they lacked any creativity, lack of imagination, and they were quite happy to sit off and give Fulham the ball. And we saw Robinson get into good positions at times to get the crossing, but his final ball was more of the Robinson we've seen in recent seasons and not the Robinson we've seen this season that has had 9 assists. So there is overall lack of quality. No clear-cut chances for Fulham, but any half chances that were created were blundered. Jimenez having a couple that went over the bar. And there was just a lack of urgency from both sides. Manchester United weren't causing a threat at all. I think it took until the 42nd minute where they registered their first shot on goal, and even that wasn't really a meaningful effort. It was from a wide corner which De Ligt managed to get a head on, but come off a couple Fulham bodies and was easily collected by Leno. So to tell the truth, the half-time whistle couldn't have come quickly enough, because it was a half devoid of any quality, no purpose from both teams, happy to play in second gear, and you were just willing them both on to raise the tempo to make it more of an exciting game, at least for the neutral perspective. But both managers would have been probably content at half-time, the fact that they went in 0-0. They hadn't conceded, and I'm sure both managers would have been thinking the same. If they could slightly raise the tempo, then 3 points were there for the taking. I'll come on to the second half action in just a moment, but before I do that, let me just tell you a little bit about our sponsors. Here at the Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. Zencastr came out the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs, it's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr. On to the second half now, and the logical thinking was that both teams could only get better. Both teams could just liven up a bit more, show a bit more urgency, a bit more intensity in order to get the 3 points on offer here. No changes by either manager at halftime, but it actually wasn't too long into the second half when Fulham were forced into a change. Harry Wilson going down with an injury and having to hobble off. Bit of a worry there, bit of concern for Fulham, but Adama Traore came on to replace him. But quite curiously, Iwobi switched over to Harry Wilson's side and Adama Traore came on to play on the left. I always feel like he's more effective coming from the right-hand side, but for some reason Silva saw it differently. He switched Iwobi over to Wilson's side and Adama played on that left. What he was trying to get out of that, I'm not quite sure. They did end up changing later on in the game, but maybe it was too late by that stage. I spoke about Manchester United's lack of creativity in the first half and the fact that they didn't really muster anything. In fact, their first genuine attempt at goal didn't come until 5 or 10 minutes after half-time, where Castagna committed a foul on Mazraoui. It was just outside the box. Initially, I thought the referee had pointed to the penalty spot, but it was just outside, so Fernandes was standing over a free kick. And he tries a cute little attempt to go under the wall. Fulham didn't have that stopper, draft excluder, I think that's the term for it. So he has a free kick, he tries to go under the wall, but it ends up hitting the side netting. Manchester United made a substitution of their own. Joshua Zirkzee, who was the match winner in the first game of the season when the two sides met, he replaced the ineffective Højlund. Højlund was dispossessed a number of times in the game, struggled to make any sort of impact, any sort of impression, so that change going to Zirkzee was inevitable. And the game was continuing where it left off in the first half. Quite scrappy, very mediocre, low on quality. If any team looked like they could score, it was Fulham, but at the same time, given the past record between these two teams, past meetings, it wouldn't surprise you if Manchester United were to pop up with a late goal, especially the longer the game went on. With Adama Traore now on the pitch, we saw a continuation of that battle with Lisandro Martinez, which we saw in the first game of the season. A bit of banter after that game on social media. And there was almost a flashpoint moment in this game between the two as well. Was Adama Traore who cuts in from the left-hand side. Martinez obviously is playing more central. He clashes with Martinez. Martinez makes a strange challenge towards Adama where he jumps in two-footed but doesn't make any contact with the player. If he had made contact, then it would have been an interesting one for VAR, but nothing came as a result. The first corner of the game didn't actually come until the 72nd minute, which just indicates how poor of a game there was and how uneventful it had been. There was a slight opening for Adama Traore. He's played in by Emile Smith-Rowe. He dummies Yoro, who has come on at this stage, but fires over the bar. And Manchester United find the crucial goal not that long after. For one of the first times in the game, Manchester United were able to get in behind Fulham, Garnacho more specifically, but it looked like Fulham had cleared the danger as Berger had intercepted. The ball comes out to Lisandro Martinez. He's from range, so he decides, why not? We haven't had many shots on goal in this game. Let me have a go. And in the flukiest manner possible, it ends up in the back of the net. He fires it from about 20 plus yards out. Sasa Lukic is the nearest Fulham player to him. It looks like it's a tame effort, to be quite honest. It looks like it's not going to trouble the goalkeeper. However, takes a wicked, massive deflection off Sasa Lukic. It loops over Bernd Leno, who manages to get a fingertip on it, but not enough of a hand on it to prevent it going in from the back of the net. And Manchester United have the lead at Craven Cottage once again. Late on, although not late enough so Fulham are unable to salvage something from the game. There is enough time where they can get back into it, but obviously you doubt whether they can do that given what we've seen in the game beforehand. So massive goal for Manchester United, massive slice of luck that they seem to get in this fixture. After the goal, Iwobi and Adama did switch sides. Very surprised it took this long for Marco Silva to do that. As I said, I do feel like Adama Traore is less comfortable on the left side, so why he was playing out there, I'm not really sure. And there were some final changes. Tom Kearney and Andreas Pereira coming on. Rodrigo Muniz at this point had also replaced Raul Jimenez. Tom Kearney, interestingly enough, sporting a a new look, a new hairstyle for the first time in his career, first time I can remember anyway. And Fulham did almost get their equaliser. It comes from a corner. Manchester United have had their problems defending corners. Fulham have had their problems scoring from corners, but it comes from an Andreas Pereira corner. Joachim Andersen manages to get in at the front post, makes good contact with his header, but there's Collier who's able to clear it off their line. So that was by far Fulham's best chance of the game. It looked to all intents and purposes that it was 1-1, but the Manchester United defender was able to clear it just in the nick of time. And at that stage, you're thinking it's not going to be Fulham's night again at home to Manchester United. The ball stayed in play from that resulting corner, but Rodrigo Muniz had an effort that was fired over the bar as he hit it into the ground. There was another chance for Rodrigo Muniz moments later. This one a better chance as he's in the area. He's close to the 6-yard box. Has defenders around him but gets a decent strike on it. Unfortunately, it goes over the bar. If this was rugby or Aussie rules football, then Fulham would have been having success, at least for a kicking standpoint, because they had no problems firing the ball over the bar between the sticks. Unfortunately, they were unable to keep it down between the sticks, and this was kind of a familiar tale all throughout the game. Not many clear-cut chances, but the ones they did have, they were very wasteful. It looked like Manchester United had sealed the game very late on in the 95th minute. It looked like Amad Diallo, Manchester United saviour so many times this season, put the icing on the cake and secured a 2-0 victory. Plays a 1-2 with Kobbie Mainoo, and the ball goes into the back of the net via a deflection. But he is adjudicated offside. VAR pictures showing us that Castagna is the last man, but Amad Diallo is barely offside. However, it doesn't have any impact on the game, and Manchester United are able to ride out that 1-0 win to secure their third Premier League win away from home all season and their first clean sheet since December the 1st. For Fulham, it's a setback. It's one that probably has long-lasting effects as far as European aspirations go, and I will give my final thoughts on this game and where it leaves both sides after I tell you a little bit about GSPN. The Global Sports Podcast Network is changing the face of football podcasts. With dedicated daily content for every Premier League team, women's football, fantasy football, and a daily Premier League wrap-up broadcast in 5 different languages, it's your one-stop shop for your daily football fix. Find GSPN wherever you find your usual podcasts. Now this just seems like a cursed fixture for Fulham, doesn't it? It doesn't matter how bad Manchester United are. They always seem to come to Craven Cottage and get the 3 points. Fulham haven't been able to get a victory against Manchester United at home since 2009, and this is probably the worst Manchester United team we've seen since then. And it's almost gotten to that stage now where losing to Manchester United is a bit of an embarrassment, just because they lose so many games. They don't look great. They look like a bottom half club, and that was no different here. Manchester United didn't win this game through brilliance and quality. They won it through a lucky goal and the fact that Fulham weren't able to do enough to win the game. I know Marco Silva, in his interview afterwards, he said we deserved more and that we dominated. Did they though? I think stats show that this was the lowest combined XG in the game for the last 2 seasons, which just again emphasises how poor of a game it was, how both teams were just as bad as each other. Yes, Fulham probably looked livelier of the 2 teams, if there was a team that looked lively. Not that that takes much effort, but you can't keep coming out after games with the same narrative of we were unlucky, we were unfortunate, we deserved more. I've said it a number of times how Fulham probably feel they should be higher in the table just on the balance of play in some games and how they've let points slip. But if you continue to keep saying it at the end of games, then maybe you're not unlucky. Maybe you're just lacking in certain departments where other teams are just better than you, and you've just got to face the facts that you're 10th in the league. The league table doesn't lie, does it? So it is kind of where you deserve to be, and there's various reasons why Fulham aren't higher in the league. You can put it down to game management, you can put it down to switching off at games, you can put it down to not being clinical. There's a various number of factors why they haven't quite accumulated the points that they would have liked, the points that they feel they should have, and it's not down to being unlucky. There's enough games gone in the season now where you just have to face up to it and accept that the team just isn't quite good enough to make that next step. I think that the worry now is you're in a position in the league table where you're not going to go down, but you're not involved in the European fight. at least as far as the league's concerned, the FA Cup they're still in, and I feel that takes on more of a priority now given Fulham's standing in the league table. You just don't want the season to peter out. There still are internal targets you probably want to set. I feel like Fulham's record points tally in the Premier League is still achievable, and it would still be a great achievement to reach that target. And you want to finish in the top half as well, especially after spending most of the season there. It would be disappointing if they were to fall off now and finish in the bottom half. And of course, for fans, they'll want to finish ahead of Brentford, won't they? But yeah, there's disappointment coming from this fixture because Manchester United didn't have to be good to win, did they? And as I said with Manchester United, any wins they do get, they're unconvincing and they're just a shadow of their former selves. But they probably wish they could play Fulham every week. Fulham have failed to score in 3 games this season, and 2 of them have been against Manchester United. And Manchester United, as I said, they haven't been used to keeping clean sheets lately. That's the first since the start of December. So it's just something when they play Manchester United, it must be a mental block they have when they play against them, because they almost seem like, the players seem like they play against Manchester United and they're playing against the name, they're playing against the size of the club rather than the players on the pitch. So yeah, it's kind of same old story, wasn't it? Fulham haven't changed. This fixture hasn't changed, has it? It always ends up in a Manchester United win, whatever way. Generally, it's with a 90th minute goal. Fulham did have time to get back in the game, weren't able to do so, but Manchester United will be thanking their lucky stars they were able to come away with a 1-0 win. And look, it hasn't changed things dramatically from a Manchester United perspective. They go up a couple of places in the league, but I think it's clear to see on that view, and they're not a great side. They look like a bottom half side, and they have 1 or 2 issues they need to sort out in the coming days as well. Marcus Rashford, that situation is a bit ugly at the minute for the player. I think Amorim was asked about Rashford after the game, and he said something along the lines that he put a goalkeeper coach on before he does players who didn't give maximum effort every day. So read between the lines there, it appears that Marcus Rashford doesn't have a future at Manchester United as long as Ruben Amorim's the manager. So if I was the player there, I'd be trying to get a move away as soon as possible. Difficult for the player, of course, because he's grown up in that setup. It's his boyhood club, but he needs to move on for the betterment of his career. But just going back to Fulham, I think not only do they have problems playing Manchester United, they have problems playing at home now. They haven't won a league game at home since Brighton in early December, and their recent tendency is to start games slow, and it was a real missed opportunity with Manchester United playing in the week. It was understandable that Manchester United were going to be a bit sluggish, certainly for the first half, and Fulham weren't able to capitalise, weren't able to take advantage of that, and were just slow, and it just probably raises more problems now, and it leads people to panic in a way about what's left of the transfer window and needing to bring players in. Harry Wilson went off with, looks like, a twisted ankle, so hopefully he's not out for too long, but Reece Nelson, his return couldn't be more timely now, could it? But even then, he's been out for a little while, so you can't expect him necessarily to hit the ground running and to be back to where he was before the injury. So yeah, it's disappointing now for Fulham because they have had a good season and now it's just starting to turn, and it looks like a good season could end up with disappointment. And yeah, I just think there's only so many times you can say we were unlucky, we were the better team. It loses its meaning after a while, doesn't it, if you say it after every game. Ultimately, you know, there's a reason why you haven't won those games, and it's just a lack of quality probably at both ends, isn't it? Okay, it's a fluke goal, isn't it? There's nothing you can really do about it. No one's at fault, and I felt Fulham defensively were pretty assured. They didn't have to do a lot. I mean, I said Joachim Andersen was a bit sloppy in the first half. I thought Calvin Bassey was really good. I think he bailed Andersen out of trouble on one occasion in the first half, and he was generally very solid. So it wasn't the most difficult game for the defence. Work needs to be done now, and you just don't want this season to peter out. I feel like the FA Cup does take on more of a priority now, and they've got a decent draw in Wigan, but they can't take that game lightly. I think almost now they should be kind of saving their best players for the FA Cup, and certainly not making 10, 11 changes and taking that for granted. But yeah, the home struggles continue. The struggles against Manchester United continue, and I think we can say officially now their European aspirations are over. But there's 15 games left to go, and for the integrity of the league, they still have to put in performances. They'll no doubt have internal targets of their own to finish in the top half and to maybe break that record points tally that was set several seasons ago. So yeah, ultimately disappointment. But there's another game round the corner and you got to lift yourselves back up for that. I mean, if you were a neutral watching that game and you made it through the 90 minutes, you must have the patience of a saint, because it was really bog standard game of football, wasn't it? But there we are, folks. Yeah, disappointment for Fulham, but Saturday's another game, another tough looking game on paper against an informed Newcastle side. But you never know. Fulham seem to have done better against the teams higher up in the league. Another disappointing result in this one against a team in the bottom half where they seem to struggle. They seem to struggle to create chances, clear-cut chances against teams that sit in that defensive manner. Not that I'm sure that Manchester United intentionally set up in that way. It's just the way the game panned out. But yeah, I think everyone's a bit frustrated, a bit downbeat after that result. Hopefully they'll be able to turn it round and maybe they can get a positive result on the weekend, as unlikely as that seems right now. That'll do it for today's match review. I'll be back looking forward to the game against Newcastle in the coming days. So continue to tune in to the Daily Fulham podcast. Hope to have you all for that.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.